I always thought betrayal would feel like a knife to the gut, sharp, immediate, life-ending. Turns out, it feels more like a slow, creeping numbness. Like when you wake up in the middle of the night, and for a second, you don't recognize your own bedroom. That was me, standing in the kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at my wife's phone, my hands completely steady, my mind disturbingly calm. No shaking, no shouting, no blind rage. Just a deep, freezing cold in my chest as I scrolled through months of messages. I wasn't supposed to see them. She thought she was smart, using a second messaging app, keeping her notifications muted, deleting texts before I could catch them. But people always make mistakes when they're comfortable, and my wife, my loving, devoted, self-proclaimed better half, had gotten way too comfortable. Maybe that's why she didn't notice when she left her phone unlocked. Maybe that's why she thought she was safe. Had a great time today, babe. Can't wait for next week. Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about last night. Tell him you're going on another work trip. I'll book the hotel. Each text hit like a tiny bullet, but not a single one drew blood. If anything, they made me sharper, more focused. The name on the messages didn't surprise me either. Alex. Some wannabe entrepreneur, always bragging about his grind set, while secretly living off his parents' money. The guy had a jawline like a cartoon villain and the personality of a wet napkin, but I suppose he had one thing going for him. He was apparently so much more exciting than I was. I set the phone down carefully, like a bomb I had just defused, and took a long, slow breath. I wasn't going to wake her up. I wasn't going to demand answers. I wasn't going to cry, or scream, or beg. No, that wasn't my style. My wife had made her move, and now it was my turn. It's funny, really. She thought she had options. She thought she had control. But the truth is, she had just handed me all the power. Because while she was sneaking around, giggling over texts and fumbling with excuses, I had been the one handling everything. The bills, the accounts, the investments, the mortgage. Everything with my name on it. And her? Well, she was just along for the ride. People like Alex don't think long-term. They get a thrill out of the secrecy, the rush of sneaking around, the illusion of power. But none of that mattered. Because at the end of the day, they were playing checkers, and I was playing chess. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started making a list. Assets, debts, credit lines, the mortgage. I had been handling our finances for years, which meant I had control over every joint account, every investment, every single financial decision we had ever made. And she? She had no idea what any of it looked like. Step one was simple. I started moving money. Slowly, carefully, in a way that wouldn't raise alarms. She wouldn't notice, not right away, at least. A few thousand here, a few thousand there, shuffled between accounts, converted into assets only I could touch. The beauty of it was that she trusted me. She thought I was the boring, dependable husband who never took risks. She had no idea how much control she had handed me over the years. Step 2. Debt. People don't realize how easy it is to open credit lines in a spouse's name if you have the right information. And I had all of hers. Slowly, methodically, I started setting things in motion. Nothing reckless, just enough to make sure that when the time came, she wouldn't have a single financial leg to stand on. Step 3. Wait. Patience is key in situations like this. If I played my hand too soon, she'd have time to maneuver. But if I let her think she was in control, let her believe she was getting away with it, she'd dig herself even deeper. She'd get careless. She'd make mistakes. And when the time was right, I'd be ready. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and smiled for the first time that night. She had no idea. No idea that the husband she thought was weak, oblivious, and predictable had already set the wheels in motion. No idea that every little secret she kept was now a weapon in my hands. No idea that when she finally made her big move, when she packed her bags, left me behind, and ran off with Alex, she'd be running straight into a disaster of her own making. For now, though, I'd wait. Let her think she had won. Let her dig herself deeper. And when the time came, I'd make sure she lost everything. Checkmate. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said I was happy. Not the kind of happiness that makes your heart race, but the steady, predictable kind. The kind that comes from knowing exactly how your days will unfold. Mornings started with the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen, the soft shuffle of slippers on tile as my wife poured herself a cup, always leaving mine just the way I liked it, black, no sugar. She'd hum absent-mindedly while scrolling through her phone, sipping as she leaned against the counter, her eyes still heavy with sleep. I'd sit at the table, reading emails, occasionally stealing a glance at her as she tapped away at whatever social media post had caught her attention. It was peaceful, simple, the kind of life people dream about when they talk about settling down. Evenings were quiet, predictable. We'd eat dinner together, sometimes home-cooked, sometimes takeout when neither of us felt like cooking. She liked reality shows, those trashy dating competitions where people screamed at each other over cocktails, and I'd sit beside her on the couch, pretending to be disinterested while secretly getting invested in the drama. Every now and then, she'd glance at me and smirk, catching the way my eyes flicked to the screen when a particularly messy argument broke out. "Told you you'd like it," she'd tease, nudging me with her foot. I'd roll my eyes, but I never changed the channel. Weekends were ours. Brunch at the same cafe where we knew the waitstaff by name, long walks through the park, stopping by the bookstore where she'd spend an eternity picking out a new novel while I wandered through the nonfiction section. On lazy Sundays, we'd lounge in bed until noon, her wrapped up in a blanket, scrolling through her phone while I read. Sometimes she'd slide closer, resting her head on my shoulder, and I'd kiss the top of her head, inhaling the faint scent of her shampoo. It felt right, safe, like we had built something solid, something unshakable. Looking back, I can see the cracks. The small things I ignored because they didn't seem important at the time. The way she started staying up later than me, lying in bed with her phone's brightness turned all the way down. The sudden interest in going to the gym more often, even though she had never been the type. The way she'd smile at texts, a slight, secretive curl of her lips before she locked her screen. I remember joking about it once. "Who's making you smile like that?" I teased, expecting her to roll her eyes and show me some dumb meme. Instead, she laughed a little too quickly, brushing it off. "Just a friend," she had said, and I hadn't thought twice about it. Then there were the work trips. At first, I had no reason to doubt her. She worked in marketing, and client meetings sometimes required travel. It made sense. But then they started becoming more frequent. Last-minute changes, sudden weekend getaways that didn't align with her usual schedule. "It's just for a few days," she'd say, giving me a quick peck on the cheek before grabbing her overnight bag. I'd watch her go, never questioning it, never suspecting a thing. And the intimacy, God, the intimacy. It had changed so slowly I barely noticed. At first, it was small, less lingering kisses, shorter goodnight hugs, a distracted, "love you," mumbled while she stared at her screen. Then, the excuses. "I'm just tired," she'd say, rolling over, her back to me. "Work's been stressful." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I never once thought that the woman I had built my life with could be lying straight to my face. I remember one night, just a few months before I found out. We had gone out for dinner, one of those rare fancy date nights where we both dressed up and pretended we weren't exhausted from the week. She looked beautiful, wearing that deep red dress I always loved, her hair cascading in waves over her shoulders. She smiled, laughed at my jokes, reached for my hand across the table. It felt like old times. Like we were still us. But then, when she thought I wasn't looking, I caught her glancing at her phone under the table, her lips pressing together as she quickly put it away. A flicker of guilt in her eyes, gone in an instant. I didn't ask. I didn't push. Because why would I? I had no reason to doubt her. And that was the greatest trick she ever pulled. Making me believe I was living in something real while she slowly dismantled it behind my back. Making me think that love was enough, that loyalty was automatic, that marriage meant security, that the life we had built together was untouchable. I see it all so clearly now. The little lies, the careful omissions, the way she had started treating me not like a husband, but like a roommate. I was just too blind to put the pieces together. But she had underestimated me. She thought I would never figure it out, that I would never see past the carefully constructed facade, that I was too comfortable, too trusting, too oblivious to ever question her. And that was her mistake. Because now, I do see. And unlike her, I don't act on impulse. I don't make reckless decisions fueled by cheap thrills and secrecy. I play the long game. And she has no idea what's coming. It was the perfume that did it. Not a dramatic discovery, not an explicit text message, not some unmistakable piece of evidence left behind in carelessness. Just a scent, one that didn't belong to me. I remember it vividly because it was one of those nights that should have been ordinary. She had just come back from one of her work trips, rolling her suitcase through the front door like she always did, tossing her coat onto the chair, flashing me that tired smile that was supposed to make me believe everything was fine. And maybe, once upon a time, I would have believed it. Maybe, in a different version of my life, I would have kissed her on the cheek, asked her how the trip went, and moved on without a second thought. But something felt off. She smelled different. My wife had always worn the same perfume, something subtle, floral, a scent so familiar to me that it had practically become part of her presence. But that night, when she leaned in just close enough, I caught a whiff of something else. Stronger, muskier, a scent that clung to her skin like it didn't belong there. I pulled back slightly, my mind already working, already dissecting. New perfume? I asked, keeping my voice casual, watching her reaction closely. She blinked. Just for a second. A flicker of something in her expression, so quick it could have been nothing, but I caught it. Then she smiled, smooth, effortless. Oh, yeah. Got a sample from one of my coworkers. Thought I'd try something different. It was a good lie. A believable one. If I hadn't been paying attention, I might have let it go. But I had been married to this woman for 7 years. I knew her habits, her routines, her patterns. She didn't try new things when it came to perfumes. She was a creature of comfort, of familiarity. The same coffee order, the same brand of shampoo, the same side of the bed, the same damn perfume every day for as long as I had known her. And yet, here she was, smelling like someone else. I let it go, outwardly, at least. I didn't press. Didn't accuse. That wasn't my style. Confrontation, in moments like these, is what they expect. They expect suspicion to come out in anger, in emotional outbursts, in weak, desperate pleading. But that's not how I operate. I didn't need answers right away. I just needed to watch. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more. The way she started keeping her phone face down on the table. The way she'd step into another room to take calls, lowering her voice just enough that I couldn't make out the words. The way she suddenly had a password on her laptop, something she had never done before. One night, I tested something. She was in the shower, her phone charging on the nightstand. I picked it up, pressed the home button. Locked. Not surprising. But then I tried her usual passcode, her birthday. Wrong. Tried the backup, our anniversary. Wrong again. Interesting. I set the phone down exactly as I had found it and walked away. No frustration. No accusations. Just information. That's all I needed. Then came the small lies. Little inconsistencies that didn't add up. Late meeting at work, she'd say, coming home 2 hours past normal, her hair a little too perfectly styled for someone who had been swamped with paperwork. Just grabbing coffee with a friend, she'd tell me, when she was gone for 3 hours. And then there was the night she forgot to come home altogether. It was a Friday. She had mentioned something earlier in the week about a possible girls' night, nothing definite, just an idea. I didn't think much of it, until I woke up at 2 in the morning and realized the other side of the bed was still empty. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. That cold feeling settled in my chest again, the one I had felt the night I smelled that foreign perfume. I didn't panic. Didn't call her in a frenzy. Didn't bombard her with texts asking where she was. That's what she would have expected. Instead, I simply waited. She came home at 5 in the morning. I was already awake, sitting in the living room, sipping coffee like I had been up for hours. She walked in quietly, her heels clicking against the floor, eyes widening slightly when she saw me. "You're up early," she said, forcing a smile. I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Couldn't sleep," I said finally. "Where were you?" Her smile faltered. "I told you, I was out with the girls. Got a little too drunk, so I just crashed at Lisa's place." Lie. Lisa was married. Had 2 kids. And was the type of woman who always made sure she was home before midnight. I nodded slowly, setting my coffee cup down. "Right. You should have texted." She exhaled, relieved that I hadn't pressed further. "Yeah, sorry. My phone died." Another lie. Her phone was fully charged, still glowing in her hand. I let it go again, but only on the surface. Because by then, I knew. Maybe not everything, not yet. But I knew enough. Enough to see the pattern. Enough to know that she wasn't just busy with work or having a girls' night. Enough to recognize that the woman standing in front of me, looking at me with those tired, forced eyes, was already half gone. And that was fine. Because while she thought she was in control, while she thought she was outsmarting me, covering her tracks, keeping her secrets safe, I was already planning. She just didn't know it yet. I stopped believing in coincidences the night she came home smelling like a stranger, and from that moment on, every little detail, every small inconsistency became a piece of the puzzle she didn't even realize I was putting together. People like her, they rely on Routine. They assume that if they keep their lies small enough, keep their stories just barely plausible, the other person will never notice. But I noticed everything: the way she started carrying her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, the way she suddenly preferred showers over baths like she needed to wash something off, the way she laughed just a little too hard when I made jokes about people getting caught cheating, like she was trying to convince herself it would never happen to her. So I stopped asking questions because questions made her careful, and careful people make fewer mistakes. Instead, I let her believe I was oblivious, let her think she was getting away with it. I started taking note of everything: where she said she was going, what time she left, what time she came home, how her mood changed after every so-called business trip. She thought she was being clever, using work as an excuse, but people who lie forget one thing: work leaves a trail. Meetings have timestamps. Locations have records, and I knew exactly where to look. First, her work laptop. She never used it at home, kept it in her bag like it was some sacred artifact, but one night she left it charging in the living room and went to bed early. Exhaustion, she said, but I had a different theory. It took me less than 3 minutes to get in. She thought changing her password would stop me, but I had watched her fingers move too many times, seen the rhythm of her keystrokes, and people are predictable creatures. They reuse passwords. I was in before she even realized it. The first thing I checked was her email, nothing too obvious, but then I looked at the drafts folder, and that's where I found them. Unsent emails, half-written messages, things she had typed out, then thought twice about deleting, names she had tried to erase, but technology doesn't forget, and neither do I. Then there were the bank statements, not ours, but hers. She had opened a separate account, something she had never done before. A few transactions here and there, restaurants I had never heard of, hotel bookings under vague names, transactions that didn't match her usual spending patterns. She had always been careful with money, a creature of habit, but suddenly she was making withdrawals from ATMs in neighborhoods she never had a reason to visit. The final piece was her location history. She had no idea that I had access to it. She had turned off tracking on her phone, but that didn't matter because she forgot one thing: our car linked to an app for insurance and maintenance, and that app logged every single trip, every single stop, every single lie she had told me about where she had been. She said she was at the office late-night meeting, sure, except the car had been parked outside an apartment complex on the other side of town for 3 hours. She said she was out with friends, but the GPS showed her at a hotel, the same one from the bank statements. I had everything now, not just suspicion, not just gut feelings, but cold, undeniable proof, and yet I said nothing. No accusations, no confrontations, because this wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about strategy. She thought she was playing a game, but she had no idea I was playing a much bigger one. I watched her closely, studied her the way a predator studies its prey, waited for the moment she would make a mistake, waited for her to get too comfortable, because that's when people slip up, that's when they expose themselves completely, and when she did, I would be ready. It was worse than I thought, much worse. Suspicions are one thing, but cold, hard proof is another. There's a difference between knowing something in your gut and seeing it laid out in front of you, undeniable, unchangeable, permanent, the kind of truth that slams into you like a freight train and leaves you standing there staring at the wreckage, wondering how you ever thought your life was something other than a lie. But I didn't break, I didn't yell, I didn't throw anything across the room, because weakness is what they expect. They expect anger, tears, begging, they expect a scene, but I don't give people what they expect. I just watch, I just learn, I just wait. She was asleep when I found it, her phone face down on the nightstand, screen dark, silent, like it had nothing to hide, but I knew better. People get sloppy when they think they're in control, and she had gotten too comfortable. I picked it up, moved quietly, thumbed over the screen, and there it was, unlocked, wide open, and waiting for me, as if daring me to look, and I did. I went straight to the messages, found the app she thought was hidden beneath work notifications, and there it was, a conversation thread. So fresh I could almost feel the heat coming off of it. Asterisk, miss you already. Asterisk, last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. A timestamp 2 hours ago, sent while I was sitting in the living room just a few feet away, drinking coffee and thinking about the life I thought I had, and then the photos. I almost laughed, not out of amusement, but at the sheer audacity of it. She didn't even bother deleting them. A hotel room, dimly lit, sheets tangled, bare skin pressed together, her face partially visible, his completely exposed. And I knew him, of course. I did. The same name, the same pathetic loser I had suspected all along. Alex. I should have felt rage. I should have felt humiliation. I should have felt like the walls of my world were crashing down, but instead I felt something colder, sharper, a kind of clarity that cut through everything else, because this wasn't the moment she destroyed me. This was the moment I became something else, something stronger. She had built an illusion, a carefully constructed lie, a house of cards stacked so high she thought it was unshakable, but she forgot one thing: when you build something on lies, all it takes is one push, and it all comes crashing down. And I was going to be the one to push. I put the phone down exactly where I found it, my hands steady, my breathing slow. I turned and looked at her lying there, peaceful, content, blissfully unaware of what was coming. She thought she had won. She thought she had me fooled. She thought she was untouchable, but what she didn't know was that I had been planning this longer than she had been planning her betrayals. She made her move. Now it was my turn. I walked out of the room feeling nothing but purpose, because this wasn't about heartbreak, this wasn't about loss, this was about setting the stage for something far greater than she could ever imagine. She had played a game with the wrong person, and now she was about to learn just how dangerous it is to betray someone who refuses to lose. She thought she was smart, she thought she was careful, she thought she had everything under control, but she had no idea that I had already started playing my own game long before she even realized she was being watched. She had spent months sneaking around, deleting messages, lying to my face, thinking she was untouchable, while I had been gathering my weapons, lining up my shots, making sure that when I struck it would be precise, calculated, and utterly final. No screaming, no confrontation, no pathetic attempts at closure, just pure undeniable devastation, the kind that doesn't just ruin someone's day but alters the course of their entire life. And the best part was she wouldn't even see it coming. Money, that was her weakness. She had never cared about finances, never paid attention to the bills, never checked the accounts. She assumed I was the responsible one, the one who handled everything, because I was dependable, boring, predictable. But she didn't realize that all that responsibility, all that control meant that every dollar we had was at my fingertips, and she had no idea what I was about to do with it. Step 1. I started moving money, nothing drastic, nothing that would set off alarms, just small transactions here and there, shifting funds between accounts, converting liquid cash into assets she couldn't touch. She had no clue that every time she swiped her card, every time she paid for one of her secret hotel stays, she was spending money that no longer existed, because by the time she figured it out, it would be far too late. Step 2. I opened new credit lines in her name, easy enough with the right information, and I had all of its: social security number, banking details, security questions. She had told me without a second thought, because why would she ever suspect that I would need them for something like this? Slowly, I started building up debt under her name, nothing too obvious, just enough to make sure that when the time came she wouldn't be able to escape. Step 3. I let her keep digging her own grave. She thought she was being so careful, but I saw every lie she told, every excuse she made, every pathetic little cover story, and I let her believe that I still trusted her, that I was still blind, that I was still the same clueless husband she had been fooling for months, because the longer she believed she was safe, the more reckless she would become, and the deeper she would sink. Step 4 was the masterpiece, the final move, the one she would never recover from. It wasn't enough to just leave her broken. I needed to make sure she felt it in a way she could never escape. She thought she was setting herself up for a better life with Alex, thought she had a future waiting for her once she finally got around to leaving me. But what she didn't know was that Alex was about to become her biggest nightmare, because while she had been busy sneaking around, I had been busy finding out exactly what kind of man he really was. And he was exactly what I had hoped for. A fraud, an opportunist, drowning in debt, barely keeping his business afloat, hanging on by a thread, and just desperate enough to latch onto the first person who could keep him above water. She thought he loved her, but he loved what she could give him, and once I made sure she had nothing left to give, he would disappear, without a second thought, leaving her alone, drowning, just like him. The beauty of it was that I didn't have to tell him anything. All I had to do was plant the right seeds, let the right people know about the debt, about the unstable investments, about the pending financial disaster heading straight for him. And once the pressure started mounting, he would do what every rat does when the ship starts sinking. He would run, and when she turned to him thinking he would save her, thinking she had escaped me, she would realize too late that she had gambled everything on a man who was just as empty as she was. Step 5. The final blow. Divorce papers waiting, signed, sealed, delivered with one last surprise. I wasn't just leaving, I was taking everything: the house, the savings, the stability, the comfortable little life she thought she was guaranteed, and by the time she even realized what was happening, I would already be gone. No warnings, no second chances, no dramatic confrontations, just silence, a void where I used to be, while she stood in the ruins of the life she thought she had built. Too late to fix anything, too late to run, too late to do anything but regret. She thought she was playing a game, but she didn't realize I had already won. It had to be perfect, no margin for error, no sudden outbursts, no hint that I knew, because the moment she suspected even for a second that something was off, she would start hedging her bets, looking for an escape, trying to salvage what little she could. But that wasn't going to happen, not this time. I had spent too long watching, too long waiting, too long making sure that when the moment came, she wouldn't just fall, she would crash, and there wouldn't be a single thing she could do about it. She thought she was careful, thought she was in control, but the truth was she had walked straight into the trap, And by the time she realized it, she would already be caught. She had no idea that every credit card swipe, every hotel visit, every whisper exchanged in secrecy had been carefully documented, every transaction, traced, every lie archived, waiting for the right moment. That moment was now. I set the pieces in place quietly, efficiently. First, I made sure her accounts were drained, her credit maxed out, not enough to raise alarms too soon, but just enough to make sure that when she really needed something, it wouldn't be there. She wouldn't notice right away. People like her never do. They live in the illusion of security, thinking nothing will ever catch up to them. But reality has a way of catching up fast, and when it does, it doesn't let go. Then I made sure Alex got the message not from me, but from the right sources. Whispers about debts, investors pulling out, rumors that the business he was barely holding together was on the verge of collapse. All it took was a few nudges, a few well-placed conversations, and suddenly his perfect little world was unraveling. And in moments like that, men like him don't look for love, they look for lifeboats, and my wife was about to find out that she was no one's lifeboat. And then the final touch, the stage where everything would come crashing down. She thought she was getting away with it, thought she had a future waiting for her, a new life just beyond the horizon. She just had to make it a little longer, string me along until she could make the clean break. But she didn't realize there would be no clean break, no escape, no soft landing. She came home late that night like she always did, her excuses rehearsed, predictable. She barely glanced at me as she walked through the door, already checking her phone, already thinking about him, probably wondering why he hadn't replied to her last message. She didn't know that by now he had already figured out the truth, already seen the financial disaster waiting for him, already started pulling away. I was sitting in the living room, waiting, calm, patient. When she finally looked up at me, I could see the shift in her expression. Just for a second, like something in the air was different, like she could feel something was wrong, but she didn't know what. "Hey," she said, casual, like nothing was happening, like she wasn't walking into the moment that would ruin her. I smiled, but there was nothing behind it, just silence, heavy stretching between us, long enough for her to shift, uncomfortably long enough for doubt to creep in. Then I slid the envelope across the table. Her name on it, nothing else. She frowned, looked at me, then at the envelope, then back at me. "What's this?" she asked, forced laughter in her voice like she thought it was some kind of joke. But I didn't answer. I just watched, waited as she pulled it open and saw everything. Bank statements, transactions, records, pages of her own betrayal staring back at her in black and white, every lie she had ever told stacked neatly in a folder. And then her phone buzzed once, twice, again. She glanced down at it, her fingers twitching, but I already knew what she was seeing. I had sent him everything, the photos, the messages, the receipts, and now he was seeing her for what she really was, and he was running just like I knew he would. Her breath hitched just slightly, a flicker of panic in her eyes, and that's when I knew she understood. This wasn't a fight she could win. This wasn't something she could lie her way out of. There was no charm, no soft apology that would fix this, no second chance waiting for her. Just the cold, hard truth staring her in the face. "Sign the papers," I said, voice even steady, like we were discussing the weather, like none of it mattered, like she didn't matter. Her hands were shaking now, barely gripping the papers as she flipped through them, reading too fast, like she thought maybe, just maybe, she would find some way out, but there wasn't one. I had made sure of that. And then the final blow, the one that broke whatever was left of her confidence. "You should probably check your accounts," I said, and I saw at the exact moment she realized just how deep the knife had gone. Her phone in her hands, fingers scrambling through her banking app, eyes widening as reality slammed into her like a freight train. She was broke, not just low on money, not just in a bad spot, completely and utterly ruined. She sucked in a breath, sharp, shaky, looking up at me with something between shock and desperation, but I just stood up, walked past her without another word, because there was nothing left to say. She had played her game, and she had lost completely, and there was no fixing it, no apology that would erase what she had done, no way to turn back time and undo the choices she had made. And the best part was she knew it. She stared at the phone like if she just blinked hard enough, the numbers on the screen would change, like if she refreshed the page one more time, the truth would somehow rewrite itself, but it wouldn't, no matter how many times she checked, no matter how hard she tried to rationalize what she was seeing. Her balance would stay exactly where I had left it, empty. Her breathing came faster, short and uneven, her fingers tightening around the phone like she was afraid it might slip from her grip. She looked up at me, then back down, then at the divorce papers, then back at me again, like she was trying to piece together how this had happened, like she was searching for some way to make sense of the ground crumbling beneath her feet. Wait, she stammered, her voice cracking just slightly. "I don't. What is this? What did you?" I tilted my head just a little, watching her carefully, watching the way the panic started creeping into her features, the way her lips trembled as she tried to form words that wouldn't come, because what could she say? There was no explanation that would fix this, no quick excuse that would undo what she had done. You know exactly what this is, I said, voice even steady, completely unshaken, because that's what scared people the most. Not yelling, not threats, just cold, controlled certainty. She shook her head, too fast, too desperate. No, this isn't what you think it is. I can explain, I swear. Just let me talk, okay? Just listen for a second. And there it was, the pathetic scramble, the frantic attempt to regain control, to manipulate, to talk her way out of it. The same tactic she had probably used on Alex, the same soft, pleading voice, the same wide eyes, the same desperate attempt to rewrite the truth, except this time it wasn't going to work, because she wasn't talking to a fool anymore. She was talking to the man who had spent months waiting for this exact moment. I took a slow step forward, watching as she flinched slightly, like I had just confirmed her worst fear, that this wasn't a dream, that this wasn't something she could smooth over, that the man standing in front of her wasn't the one she had been lying to all this time, but someone else entirely, someone she had never actually known. You can explain, I repeated, almost amused by the idea. All right, go ahead, explain. She opened her mouth, but no words came, just a choked breath, her fingers tightening around the papers like she could physically hold on to the last shreds of whatever life she thought she had left. She tried again, voice weaker now. I made a mistake, okay? It wasn't a mistake. I echoed, nodding slightly. You're right, it was a mistake, but not the kind you can fix. Her eyes flickered again, her mind racing, trying to find something, anything to grasp onto, and then she went for the next phase of the performance, the tears, the trembling voice, the wide, glossy eyes, like maybe if she looked small enough, vulnerable enough, I would fold. Maybe if she played the role of the remorseful wife, I would forget everything. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered, tears now spilling down her cheeks. I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Please, you have to believe me. I still love you. I swear I do. I just made a mistake. I laughed, not loud, not exaggerated, just a short, dry chuckle, because it was pathetic, the sheer audacity of it, the idea that she thought those words still meant anything, that she could take a match to everything we had, and then try to put out the fire with a few empty apologies. You don't get to say that, I said flatly, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. You don't get to talk about love. You don't get to pretend you care. Not anymore. The tears kept coming, but I saw it now, the fear behind them, not guilt, not regret, but fear, because she knew she had lost. She knew there was no second chance, no do-over, no carefully crafted apology that would put the pieces back together. She had spent months thinking she was in control, months thinking she was pulling the strings, but now she was finally realizing what it felt like to be powerless. She tried again, voice breaking apart. Please, just let's talk, okay? We can fix this, we can. There is no we, I interrupted, watching as she physically recoiled from the finality in my voice. There hasn't been a we in a long time. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her finish, because I was done. I had given her enough time to process, enough time to feel the weight of it all, enough time to understand that she was standing in the ruins of her own making. I grabbed my jacket, slid the papers back toward her, the signature lines staring up at her like a final command. Sign them, I said simply. She hesitated just for a second, like she was still clinging to the idea that there was some way out of this, some last-minute save, but she knew there wasn't. Her hands trembled as she reached for the pen, her breath unsteady, her face streaked with tears. She knew there was no other option. And then, as the ink met the paper, it was over. She had spent so long lying, so long pretending, so long believing she had won. But in the end, she was just another loser in a game she never even realized she was playing. I walked out of that house and never looked back, not because I needed to escape, but because I had already won. There was no need for a final word, no dramatic exit. She had already signed away everything that mattered to her, and the beauty of it all was that she didn't even realize how deep the fall would be until it was too late. She thought the worst part was losing me, but she hadn't yet understood that she was about to lose everything. It started slowly, like a crack in the foundation, spreading wider with each passing day. First came Alex, or rather the absence of Alex. The moment he realized she wasn't bringing anything to the table, the moment he saw her bank accounts drained, her credit cards frozen, her debts rising, he was gone. Not even a conversation, no drawn-out goodbyes, just silence, messages left on read, phone calls ignored. The final cold realization that the man she had destroyed her life for had no intention of saving her. He had been using her just like she thought she had been using me, and now that she had nothing left to give, she was worthless to him. Then came her job, or more accurately the loss of it. She had always thought she was untouchable there, secure, confident. After all, who would question her, the dedicated wife, the hard-working employee? But whispers travel fast, and in an industry where reputation is everything, having her personal life dragged into the light wasn't something she could recover from. It didn't take long before she was called in for a discussion about her behavior, and though they phrased it delicately, the message was clear. They didn't want someone like her representing their company, and just like that, the career she had spent years building was gone, just another casualty of her own arrogance. Friends disappeared next, people who once invited her out, who once filled her social calendar, who once laughed at her jokes, started distancing themselves, because no one wants to be associated with a sinking ship. People love drama, but they love self-preservation more, and one by one, they dropped her. Quiet exits, polite excuses, until suddenly she was alone, left with nothing but her own reflection and the weight of every choice she had made. Her family was the final blow. They had always liked me more than her, even she knew that, but she had never thought they would turn their backs on her completely. She had underestimated the power of shame, the weight of public exposure, because I didn't just make sure they knew about her betrayal, I made sure they saw it, the messages, the photos, the receipts, not in an angry outburst, not in a fit of revenge, but in a calm, measured delivery, a simple presentation of facts, and that was all it took. Disappointment is a slow poison, and watching her own parents struggle to even look at her, watching them shift uncomfortably at family gatherings, unable to offer her comfort, unable to justify what she had done, that broke her in ways I never even intended. She tried reaching out at first, calls, texts, emails, all ignored. She tried apologizing, tried bargaining, tried pretending it had all been a mistake, but there was no one left to hear her, no one willing to give her the second chance she had never earned, and so she spiraled deeper, sinking into the consequences of her own making, and I watched from a distance, never engaging, never giving her the satisfaction of a reaction, just letting her destroy herself piece by piece. In me, I thrived without her, not just because I had moved on, but because I had won. My finances were intact, my career untouched, my reputation unscathed. I walked away with everything while she was left clawing at the remnants of a life she had thrown away, and there is no greater revenge than watching someone realize too late that they had it all and lost it for nothing. The last time I saw her was by accident, a brief encounter at a cafe. I barely recognized her. She looked tired, drained, like she had aged a decade in months. She saw me too, and for a moment there was something in her eyes, something raw, something desperate, but she said nothing, just looked away, as if even trying to speak to me would be a humiliation too great to bear. And I just smiled, finished my coffee, and walked away, because there was nothing left to say, nothing left to prove. I had already won long ago, and she would have to live with that for the rest of her life. It's funny how people always think they have more time, more chances, more ways to make things right. They convince themselves that they can fix the damage even when the foundation is already crumbling. They believe they can lie, cheat, manipulate, and still somehow walk away unscathed. That's what she thought. She thought she could have everything, the security of a husband who handled everything, the thrill of a lover who made her feel desired, the illusion of control in a world she barely understood. But reality doesn't work like that. There are no do-overs, no clean breaks, no way to rewrite the past once the truth is exposed. She gambled with everything and lost, and the best part is she did it to herself. I never forced her hand, never made her choices for her. She did that all on her own. I simply gave her what she deserved. Some people say revenge is a waste of time, that the best thing to do is walk away, let karma do its job, let life punish them naturally, but those people don't understand the satisfaction of making sure justice is delivered with precision, watching as the very person who thought they were untouchable realizes too late that they were the weakest piece on the board. I didn't just leave her, I dismantled her. I took away every safety net she thought she had and let her fall face first into the consequences of her own actions, and now she has to live with it every single day, the regret, the shame, the isolation, wondering how she let it all slip away, wondering why she thought she could play me like a fool. I've moved on, but she never will. That's the real difference between us. I build a new life, one without deception, without betrayal, without the dead weight of someone who never truly valued me and her. She's stuck, trapped in the mess she created, staring at the wreckage of a life she could have had if she had just been honest, if she had just chosen differently, if she had just understood that people like me don't lose, people like me don't break, people like me don't forgive. I sometimes wonder if she wakes up in the middle of the night thinking about it, if she stares at her reflection and barely recognizes the person looking back at her, if she replays every moment in her head wishing she could undo it, but she can't. That's the thing about betrayal. It's permanent. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many excuses she tells herself, the truth is still the truth, and the truth is she ruined herself long before I ever lifted a finger. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have walked away quietly, let her believe she got away with it, let her move on like nothing happened? Or would you have done exactly what I did, made sure that she felt every ounce of the pain she tried to inflict on me? Let me know, because as far as I'm concerned, she got exactly what she deserved.